Hello, this is TelecomTV reporting from Paris at the MPLS, SDN and NFV World Congress 2016. I'm talking with Ariel Efrati, who is the CEO of Telco Systems. Ariel, good to see you again.
Good to see you again, always.
Hasn't been a long time, but we've got lots of things to talk about. This is a very techie event. This is serious, stuff. And it's very interesting to see what's happening as the traditional wireline structured service providers and industry begins to move over to software-based SDN and NFV networks of the future. We're getting closer to it. Let's talk about, first of all, about MPLS, a venerable old technology, been around for a good old while, still very useful, and even though it's middle-aged or late middle-aged, do you think that SDN and NFV, when they are deployed commercially, will make MPLS redundant?
Not at all. I think that we should differentiate. Maybe there's a confusion in the market. I believe that MPLS it's like it's transport. It's a transport layer. When you look at NFV and SDN, it's more like the functional element and the control element. Sure. So if to use an analogy, which is not very accurate, but it will be good to understand for people to understand, is I would see the MPLS as the road itself, okay? The kind of vehicle, if it's a taxi, if it's a bus, if it's a private car, will be the NFV. What is the function that the car is providing? And the driver will be the SDN. So it actually complements itself. In the past, MPLS was all about just connectivity. This is what service providers provided, it's connectivity. Nowadays, they want to introduce value-added services, and this is exactly the NFV, what it brings in, and also the flexibility that the drivers itself, which is the SDN, can contribute to this equation. So I believe SDN is a long turner, and we'll have a long way ahead of us.
Thanks, let's put that very clear, and I must say, I think everybody agrees with it, really. The other thing about NFV is that it's an initiative that has been driven by the service providers, the operators themselves, rather than the vendors and the manufacturers. And as a result, the service providers have done that because they have felt in the past, sometimes legitimately and sometimes not so much, so locked into systems and locked into purchasing cycles with vendors that they're stuck with. And so they said, look, we like NFV, we like the idea of it, we like SDN. We're willing to go along with it, but we don't want to be trapped. We don't want to have to buy everything from the same set of manufacturers we've done so in the past. We want this to be open. And the watchword for NFV for 3.5 years now has been openness. The result of that has been that we've seen a proliferation of ecosystems all over the place. There are so many now, it's getting hard to count them all.
That's true.
And they're all hoping these individual ecosystems will be sufficiently powerful and attractive to win service provider business. How then do you think, how does a service provider select an ecosystem when many of the same players, the same manufacturers and vendors are involved in every single one of the different ecosystems? So as they're choosing a transformation partner, how do they go about doing it?
I think there's I would say confusion in regards of what is the purpose of those alliances and those ecosystems. For example, Telco System has an open edge alliance. I would say that everyone has one. And what is people maybe I think misses is that it's not meant to pick the ecosystem as your own choice. Those ecosystems is a place where we actually can play together. We can make sure that we can speak and the openness really exists. Because if you choose an ecosystem, in other words, you choose another closed solution. You actually want to choose the vendors that play in many ecosystems that can interoperate with others. A good example would be we have our own ecosystems, but we also did an NFV proof of concept with Orange, with Cisco, with NetRounds, and with many others.
We talked about it.
Exactly. This is the last time when we talked about that. So I think that's a good example. So no one chooses an ecosystem. You would like to choose a player that actually knows how to speak with others, that can prove that. And I would say more than that, you mentioned it right. I think that the big players were pushed not to be all the time the monolithic solution. And I think for them it's quite shocking. For a player like us, like Telco System, which is more agile in nature, that knows how to accommodate that, it's a great opportunity as well. And I think that service providers will be wise as well to go and choose and cherry pick those ones that can do the best function in the best way and still make them open. Because I believe, and last time when we discussed what is open, open is the ability to be free to choose one thing and to integrate with another, and not to take everything from one single vendor like Cisco used to do.
NFV's been with us now, Ariel, for what? Just a bit over 3 years, 3.5 years. Very exciting technology. Everybody expected quick changes. Well, not everybody. The vendors and the manufacturers expected quick changes. The service providers are a bit more reticent about that and saying, well, let's see what happens first before we commit everything to commercial deployment. Manufacturers and vendors want to make some return on the huge investments that they've made in NFV and SDN. SPs are saying, well, hang on, we will in due course, but not just yet. How long do you think it's going to be before we see real commercial use cases for NFV out there?
I think that you have a long tenure with the industry. I do as well, 25 years. I think in my lifetime, at least, I experienced, 3 transformative changes in the network. Remember the days when we had switches, which were hardcore switches, very much, and then they moved into soft switch, and then came the mobile industry, which changes that. I think that this is another element that actually is going to change the market. I think that's the curve that actually is going to make it happen, because the move into software makes sense today. I think that also, I think this is true. It's not just, I would say, imaginary anymore, because the market is moving in the same vector. It's not like, for example, if LTE versus WiMAX, 2 different vectors, no one knew where to go at.
Sure.
The vector is very clear now. Today, there's proof in the pudding. Yes, this is still the telecom industry. We are slow adopters. It's very mission critical, so no one wants to make mistakes. So I think that there's an incubation period. I believe that this year is really a transformation year. I see that with our customers. They are much more, I would say, familiar with the industry. They know what they want to zero on. So I would say there's a business case behind that. When I'm speaking with customers, I understand what is the business case behind it. What is the driver indeed, not just the buzz that everyone speaks about that. It's what actually they're going to generate out of it. So having said that, I believe that, you know, the statement of John Donovan saying that by the year 2020, 75% of their services will be virtualized. I just spoke this morning with a Verizon executive telling me that their wish is by 2016, they will not buy any appliances, it will be a pure software. So this is a bit optimistic, no doubt, but I believe that in 2016, most of the proof of concept will be fruitful enough in order to generate new projects. It will be slow, the way the telecom system, the telecom providers are doing that, but you will start to see real deals. And not just the small and esoteric examples, but more in the main stream. 2018, I think, will be very significant in real deals. So 18 is going to be a massive deployment of NFV. 17, we'll see the trend going up. So it's a golf stick. Okay, so now we see the very slow uprising. 17 will take the steep, and then 18 will be really at the top. So that's my view on things. And I think that from the dynamics, I know the market, it's moving quite fast versus the past. So I think that today the market is ripe to take a bite.
What about the security of NFV and SDN networks going forward? Do you think worries about the potential of security breaches in those programmable networks are holding back the commercial deployment of NFV as well?
Not yet, but I would suspect that it will come very fast. We get that. We have our own cybersecurity, and this is one of the vectors that we are driving because we believe that will be the case. Today, most of the operators are really much dwelling on the function and how it will work and how you provide the service. But that's where the rubber meets the road when they realize that, oops, there's something that is missing in this, I would say, pack. And I think that this will come to, I would say, realization during this year. We see that nowadays they're starting to understand that. When we speak with them, they say, oh, really? We forgot about that. And I don't speak about firewalling. I'm speaking about how to guard the NFV infrastructure. Because remember, back then when you had a switch, it had a hardcore, I would say, switch. No one could hack maybe Broadcom. It's very hard. But now when it's an x86, every, 16-year-old hacker can attack that. Now once you have a virtualized environment, things can pass from one VNF to another VNF, and denial of service of that will be very impactful, because it will not impact just a website like we know the DDoS attacks on websites. It's going to impact the network, and then there will be a downturn. It's like a blackout. Think about denial of service on a transformer of electricity. All the city will be blacked out. Yep. And this is the kind of thing. So we believe that this is not yet holding them back. Once they start to implement that, they start to realize the vulnerabilities. Now, the ones that will not get that on time will suffer. The ones that do will be secured. And this is more than important than 5 nines. This is about business continuity. And I believe that that will change. We just won an award, an industry award for that. So the fact that there is an industry award at that aspect means that people start to realize what's the value of it and how important it is. When we speak with service providers and tell them about that, of course it is important, they tell me. So what do you do about it? And then they become mute. And I think that's something that they need to look at it. And when we discuss that, they realize and wants to get a workshop and wants to explore more and understand the scenarios. And I think it's not yet holding them back. Once they will move into deployments later this year, it will stop them. And I think that's a key element for them to look at.
Okay then, Ariel, given the potential vulnerabilities of NFV networks that we've just been talking about, how do service providers go about making their NFV initiatives properly secure?
I believe it's not similar to IT security. Okay, so that's very important. Because what you need to do is you need to first be at the source when traffic is actually going through. So you have to probe. You have to have a kind of a probe, collecting information. But collecting information at the source doesn't mean that you understand what happens in the network. This information needs to go to a kind of a big data analytics that actually can analyze what's going on and then detect the threats. But the fact that you know what is the threat or what is the damage that can happen, the big question is whether you can do an action, take an action upon it. Because you know a lot of things, but if you cannot prevent it, it's actually frustrating.
Ariel Efrati, really interesting interview. Thanks very much. Good to see you.
Always a pleasure to be here. Thank you, Martin.